I think I will focus on some of the elements I wanted to share, and that is the most important point, and then we can discuss if need be. Much previous remarks, especially on the need for, Martin mentioned the need for a new paradigm for developments, the importance of planning, a new institutional architecture, a new allocation of resources, and you both mentioned the role of education as central. And today I would like to share a little bit with you my experience, my academic experience in teaching evolutionary economics. I think it's important because in some way it's not very well known, and also it's very much in line with what Martin was mentioning in system thinking. Evolutionary economics is system thinking in a dynamic way, so it's just system thinking in a way, just that is a specific focus on the interaction between systems. But I will just start by the fact that in economics is probably one of the sciences, social sciences, that is so much closed within its own rationale, having told the same story for about 200 years and without changing much in terms of content and especially in terms of paradigm. And the paradigm itself is really what has been described and called by many scholars a mechanistic paradigm. What is a mechanistic paradigm? It means that everything is related to the notion of equilibrium. The general model in neoclassical economy is the general equilibrium model. Everything is in equilibrium. And I don't know about you, but I have never seen any general equilibrium in my life. I have been looking for quite a while. Never in my life I have seen any general equilibrium. But I have seen a lot of processes changing processes, evolutionary processes, sometimes processes that inertia, but a kind of dynamic inertia when forces are reinforcing each other. So just to remind you why we have this importance in the mechanistic paradigm in economics, it's because it was through a mechanical model that neoclassical economists could prove or make a formal validation of the invisible hand that Adam Smith mentioned at the time. So Adam Smith was also a great admirer of mechanistic models and of astronomy, and he thought that well, the economy functioned like the Walras in Lausanne, where I come from, and also a very much more sophisticated economist, made a great model to formalize that, yes, in very specific conditions you have a general equilibrium. But what are those conditions? You might have heard about them. Methodological individualism, rational choices, as every choice were rational, exogenous preferences. No matter what the social values are, you have exogenous preferences. Perfect information. Who has perfect information? I don't know. Perfect competition. No actor has the possibility to change the rules. Market exchange of private goods only, without any externality, without any elements that are just out of the scope of property. And a monetary unidimension, which is crucial in exchanges and which allows substitutability between different inputs and reversibility between different choice. You know, you can exchange between money and apples with natural capital, and natural capital with technical capital. There is all this possibility of interchanging inputs and outputs, whatever you want. A kind of atemporal model which probably does not exist except in some books, but which is still quite important and really taught for every student in any university is taught this kind of approach. So I had a lot of concern about climate change. I wrote my master thesis on climate change in '89, and I was one of the first in my graduate institute to address these issues. And I was told, well, this is not really serious. You shouldn't do that. I mean, climate change is very open to questions. And I said, well, but there is a World Climate Conference in Geneva. Well, those natural sciences are always very dramatic about those things. Why don't you take a serious economic topic? And I said, but I think this is a very serious topic. So I think I was right, and unfortunately I was right, because now, as it was mentioned, climate change is absolutely crucial and urgent topic to address. But still, I wonder why it was not possible to address those things, and I could realize that the complex nature of the process, the temporalities, all these elements were not taken into account by the traditional, conventional economic perspective. And I thought, well, so we have to change the economic theory as well. It's part of the change. But changing the economic theory and I understood that it meant to come back to this earlier epistemological consideration and think of not having a mechanistic methodology or epistemology, but really think in terms not of equilibrium, but in terms of process. And I thought this is the and some authors mentioned this, and I will maybe cite the physicist that you probably all know, David Bohm. In the metaphysics of process, creation and transformation of order is always taken to be the deepest and most fundamental account of the laws of a process. And I thought this is really different. If we look at the economy as a process, it's totally different. First of all, it's an open system. It's an open system because it's always interacting with the social environment and the natural environment. There is social impulse that define what is interesting, what kind of motivation, if it's profitable or not. You were mentioning these important elements of, is it profitable? If it's not, I'm not doing it. So very important social impulse. But then the economy is also a transformation of many different types of resources, and where the biophysical dimension of economic activity is crucial. And this biophysical transformation is a convergence of different processes. Very local processes can affect very long-term natural processes, such as when you are using fossil fuels for nearly millions of years, to create some of the fossil fuels that are just transformed in a few seconds in an economic open system, interacting system. Both elements, natural and social dimensions are interacting, and this is a basic consideration. And then you can think about, okay, if this is a basic consideration, what are the key elements, what are the key factors that intervene in this co-evolution between economic, social systems and a natural system? And again, coming back to the evolution of man, you can identify two critical elements, which are technology and institutions. Institutions in terms of symbols, values, collective reference. Those are the two elements that are critical and specific to the human species that you don't find in any other species, and that are characteristic to the human evolution. Now, interestingly, technology and institutions are totally exogenous in the mechanistic model, but they are totally central in the evolutionary model. They are key factors of change. And it can be a change, of course, you know that technology is the place for innovation, where the creativity of economic agents is really mobilized, and there's a lot of novelty, change of elements, transformation, as I was mentioning before. But also, institutions are absolutely critical in the way, first of all, they provide some stability, some continuity, and some social order, but also sometimes some kind of inertia. And difficulty to change when there is a need for change. So, interestingly, technology and institution, of course, interplay. And again, it's important to see the way they interplay, the way if there are synergy between or conflicts between technology and innovation. Very often new technological innovation just challenge the habits, mentalities, and institutional conditions, the rules. We need new rules to adapt to new kind of technology. But very often, some technology are also a way to reinforce some kind of institutions. And this, in that way, the interplay or techno-institutional interplay can be a very important factors for the evolution of a society. It can be thought of being sometimes as strong as what I call a social or cultural attractor. It can attract the evolution of a society. Think about the complex that are relating the capitalist system and the industrial system. You have with the capitalist system the opportunity to invest without previous saving, which is capitalization. You use the security for future income that you can have with the property titles. You get money out of it. It's not that you invest because you have saved. You can invest because you have engaging the future. But this is a very strength of the capitalism because it allows you to invest without previous saving. Very strong characteristic. And when you mention in the same time the possibility of industrial technology based, of course, on the extremely important storage of energy in mineral resources, you have a kind of response that allows this potential for expansion to concretize. So the capitalist industrial complex is a way that really attracted a lot of our societies, starting with in the Western world, but all becoming a very important attractor for the world development. So there were this attractor for the world development, but were dependents, because in a way we were having access to new type of resources, but always in the need to have more industrial activities based on using more mineral resources and especially fossil fuels, but also a lot of modalities that were compatible with capitalist modalities. Think about the way we try to solve the climate problems. We thought about creating a market, thinking, well, that's the way it should work. Of course, it doesn't work because it's based on competition. It doesn't take into account the power asymmetries. It doesn't take into account the possibility for private actors to capitalize on those and it creates a lot of social exclusion. But this is a kind of lock-in in the way problems are thought, and this kind of dependence upon, well, we have to make it compatible with capitalist modalities. It was, but it didn't solve the problem. So there is a real need to change the perspective and to see also, as that was mentioned many times before, alternative path, alternative type of technology, alternative type of institutional modalities. If capitalism rests on private property, there are many other type of institutional modalities than private property. You can think about state property, collective property, common ownership. You can think about different partnership between different actors. You can think about multi-level governance. You can think about polycentric governance, where different actors are acting and sharing the responsibility of managing the common goods. But you don't find this in the mechanistic neoclassical world, because they will say, no, you have to make property rights because that's the way it works. And it's not the way it works when you tackle the environmental and social issues and dimensions seriously. So I will maybe end here, just saying that in my interpretation or understanding, I think your important work for a new economic theory should really consider the basic epistemological foundation of this economic theory, give adequate attentions and care to this evolutionary economic perspective that have been proposed for quite a long time. Thorstein Veblen wrote in 1898 why economics is not an evolutionary science. more than 100 years ago. So we can wonder why it didn't prompt out as a solutions. We can think there also in terms of lock-in, because there have been clearly an academic lock-in. I've been taught only neoclassical economics, and I was not told it was neoclassical economics. It was economics, that's all. And we lost all the richness of school of thought, especially the Physiocrats, mercantilists, the classical. There was so much diversity and richness in the economic history of thought, and now we just have to learn how to solve a problem by creating a market. So I would say have a closer look to these important discussions on evolutionary economics, and also, which is, in my opinion, a way to have an integrating economic approach that is in line with what we know in different science, natural science, social science. It's really in an integrated but differentiated approach when you can see the specificity of economics, but in interaction and in interrelation with the context. Thank you very much.